Prevention Committee, I think we're getting a little bit of a late start, but we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's good to see everybody out there. It's good to see the sunshine again. I've been in Dallas for, and I haven't seen it in about 72 hours, so that's tough. Mary Ann, can you call roll?
Shelley.
Here.
Susan Birchfield.
Here.
I'm Marian Contreras. I'm here. Wayne Dennis. Deborah Nichols. Kara Tapley. Jessica LaPlante. Thelma Scott. And Stuart Williams.
Here.
Here. And Courtney Edwards. Courtney's here. Courtney's here.
Okay, Courtney, can you, and it doesn't look like we have a quorum. The Injury Prevention Committee held a workday meeting on January the 17th, I believe. We do have minutes from that meeting, but it doesn't, since we don't have a quorum, it doesn't look like we can approve minutes. Courtney, can you give us an update on the Trauma Registry Work Group?
So the Trauma Solutions Registry Work Group met just prior to this meeting at 11:30 today. The presentation that was given to us was a report of 2011 hospital summary data out of the Texas EMS Trauma Registry. The one that we evaluated and looked at was specific to RAC-D with the RAC-D project. But it's a great one-page report that breaks down the mechanism of injury so that you can see what's going on during that year in that RAC, payer source, some summary counts of hospitalizations, transfers in and out, deaths, demographic breakdown with age, sex, race and ethnicity, and also the arrival discharge information. So giving us a perspective, being able to look at a RAC-based level of some of the basic information that being able to see where your leading mechanisms of injury are, where you can possibly focus, where you need to specify according to age. So that was great progress out of the registry. It was very surprising to see, and it made us all very happy. We discussed that report. We also received some information regarding EMS records, EMS agencies that are submitting to look at the entirety of the data that we're getting from EMS and what can we do to make that maybe a little more robust in future planning and what we can do with them. So lots of work has been going on. It was a good meeting. Discussion that there's going to be a conference call in April where we further discuss some of that. But it's good information that's coming out.
Okay, thank you. TTAF Injury Prevention Report.
So last night we were at the TTAF room where Robin Garza, the division chair for TTAF, presented on the Just Drive campaign, how they have gone through their pilot. They've gone through phase 1 with the 5 initial sites that they're seeing. And the information is uploaded to ttaf.org under the Injury Prevention Division, where now they're really wanting the RACs and the hospitals to take a lead in that, pull the resources from the internet. They're available to them, implement them in their community. They do have an evaluation process. First round of the evaluation has been completed. They're going to do the 1-year follow-up at that time. They're also planning on days where they are wanting to do a community-directed Take the Pledge Day, and then also one later in the fall. So the community one geared towards the spring, the one in the fall geared towards high school students, to see with all the communities in Texas and all of those working with the Just Drive campaign geared towards taking the pledge to just drive and not participate in distracted driving, however that may be, on that day, and getting the counts. So up on the website there's information, there's sample media releases, sample press releases, there's going to be sample PowerPoints to facilitate the education that's going on with the communities as to why is it pertinent to them to focus on their driving task and not what other distractions might be available to them, how they can implement that, surveys for pre and post implementation, so giving them that robust information.
Thanks, Courtney. And as I understand it, they have not selected the day yet in May, but that information will be forthcoming.
Correct.
And we'll make sure it will be on the TTAF website as soon as we here, we'll also try and check into making sure that it's distributed through the GTAC website as well. So, okay.
And then with TTCF, so the Texas Trauma Coordinators Forum, meets prior to TTAF. We like to think of TTCF as some of the doers. The Just Drive campaign was presented to them. They were discussed. There are projects, and moving forward, is there some discussion about some evaluation that can be done on programs of good contention. Discussion was Shattered Dreams, how lots of people are doing it, the lack of substantial evidence into outcomes, and that you know, some people are talking about how they feel that it doesn't, and so we spurred them on that, you know, get together, let us know who's doing it, and we can create some process to create, you know, formulative evaluation and looking at those programs. You know, what are they doing at their community that might cause that impact? But also to bring programs that they're doing at their hospital and the, you know, the implementation of it, the process of it, the outcomes of it, to kind of create a resource, look at best practice during that meeting and that process. So.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is a presentation of the Texas Injury Indicators report, and each state has to is encouraged. I don't know if it's a requirement, whether you have CDC funding or not, but the Injury Center at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention ask each state every year to send them data regarding injury indicators, and so I think John Helston is going to give us the Texas report.
Okay, so there's great intro. Thanks, Shelley. This is what we have provided to the CDC. Not being a funded state, it is optional for us, providing them this information on injury, hospitalizations, and fatalities. So this is for 2011. The way this whole thing came about, it's worked by a number of groups back in the late 90s and then again revised in the 2000s.
We can't hear you. John, you got a microphone right there.
All right.
Thank you.
How about now? Yeah, all right. So the way these indicators came about were by several work groups. The CDC's Center for Injury Prevention, STIPTA at the time, State and Territorial Injury Prevention Directors Association, now Safe States, SAVERS, the Society for Advancement of Violence and Injury Research.
Good job.
Lots of acronyms. One other group that I'm blanking on right now. Anyway, consensus recommend. Oh, Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists work group came together. So professionals in the field came together to make put together this list of indicators. So it's summary data as well. I think what it does is it provides a quick snapshot and a quick overview, and we'll see some things what I think that points out to where it needs further exploration. So I'm going to show you some of these numbers because I recognize they're probably hard to see. See if I have a pointer from here. All right. So these are fatalities only, this first table. This comes from death certificate information for 2011. It's broken down for total males and females, and then these particular injury categories over here in the left column. Altogether in 2011, we had 13,749 Texans die from injury. This is a pretty consistent number. When we adjust that for rates to adjust for the age distribution in a population, and that's what an age-adjusted rate is, and so that if you have a predominantly elderly population, for example, it doesn't distort your rates. So we adjust those by age so that we can compare them across time, across groups, across geographic places. Okay, 56.4, 56 people out of every 100,000 people is roughly our rate in 2011. Coming down this left column, these first couple are unintentional drownings. We had 369 drownings in the state. Fires, 1,496. Fires, 190. Firearm-related, 2,568. Homicides, 1,232. There's some overlap in some of these categories. They are not mutually exclusive. So this is not, if you would add up all the numbers, this is not 13,749. So some of the firearms are included in the homicide category. They're also included in the suicide category. Okay, so when you look at this and you're looking at it for injury prevention, again, it's some of the things that you want to pull apart a little more closely. Motor vehicle traffic, 3,130. Here's another one where they're combined. You have poisonings, almost 3,000, 2,979, and acute drug overdoses, which again are just a subset of those poisonings, including intentional and unintentional. So what they've done is they've combined the intent as well as the cause, the mechanism of injury. Suicide, 2,793, and traumatic brain injuries, just about the same number, 2,698. Some of these things are based on external cause of injury codes, E-codes. Some of these things are straight diagnosis codes. Okay? What we see when we look at the males and the females is we see, as in we know in injury, there's this disproportionate thing between males and females. And we can see it down with the exception of falls are pretty close, a rate of 8.7 for males, 5.8 for females. Other things, the firearms, 17.7 for males, 3.3 for females. That 5-to-1, 6-to-1 sort of ratio is what we're used to seeing. Some are less than that. The poisonings comes down 12.2. Here, I'm losing my point. 12.2 versus 7.8. Suicides, again, same thing. Here's the same table now with hospitalizations. Now, these data come from hospital discharge data. These aren't the trauma registry hospital data. So hospital discharge data are a standard data set that are collected nationally, so it makes it easy to compare. 2011 data, 119,682 hospitalizations for injuries. Again, this is not necessarily the number of people, it's the number of hospitalization. You can be injured more than once in a year, and that may require hospitalization. So it's injuries. When we go down here and we look, same causes over here, but what we can see is where the rank order is. We see falls being our number one cause here in hospitalizations, 27,811. We talked before about that male-female proportionateness. Here where we see where females exceed the rate of males, numbers and rate, 137 per 100,000 for women, 101,000 for men. One of the things that's included in this data set, or in this set of indicators that's not included in the fatalities, are hip fractures and those of the 65 years of age or older. We don't use they don't have age-adjusted rates. This is an age-specific rate for those people that are 65 and up. And again, we see here where females have almost a 2-to-1 rate over males. So things like the hip fracture, the poisoning, and the falls, females have a higher rate than what males do in these hospitalizations. If we look at it by age group, this is all injuries again. Now we're looking at those fatalities again. We can see that for the total as well as for males and females, that we have low rates in our children. And they increase with age, and by the time we get to the elderly, they're sky high. So I'm going to take that top group out of here just so we can look at these other ages a little better. It makes it on a different parameter for us or scale for us to be able to look at these other ages. So I've just pulled that 85 plus group out of there. All right? The blue is for the total. The red bars are for women and the green bars are for males. Again, we can see how, in our childhood, when we compare with our adults, our children, and this is across the board, have low rates of fatality, injury fatalities. And then once we get into adulthood, if you look at that 15 to 24, and let's just look at those green bars, with rare exception, they're pretty stable across the ages. They're high. And they're high for all ages. With the women, we see more of an increase in age as we come across the lifespan. So this is the thing that I point out when I talk with the suicide prevention population, because we put a lot of our prevention activities into teenagers. And I understand that. We have a lot of teen suicide prevention activities that are going on. And we're seeing some results with that, so it's phenomenal. But it's not where the burden of our problem is. Here's the same thing for hospitalizations. We see a very similar pattern. Increasing with age, did the same way. Pull that older age group out just so that we could put it on a scale where it's a little more comparable. That yellow bar is kind of hard to see in here. But we almost see it still low in the young ages. This is hospitalizations. Interestingly, higher in children and infants than in our kids until we get up to that 15-year group. But we know that 5 to 14-year group has always been a low rate group. Those are safe ages of childhood. Yeah. We almost start to see a U shape. We get pretty high in that 15 to 24 group, and then it comes down for men, and then it comes back up with age. Some of this, that 15 to 24, again, to me, this is a nice indicator. It's a nice overview. But if you think about your own life, your children, the people around you, there is a world of difference between a 15, 16, and a 17-year-old than there is a 20 and a 22 and a 23-year-old. And what we see them doing in activities in terms of everything else and where their injuries are occurring and when are very different. So it'd be worthwhile to pull these things apart even more. And then this one is by age group. And these are the fatalities. And so that we can go down the columns. These are simply numbers of deaths. Okay, so these are not rates. We cannot compare across these age groups because there may be 2,153, I'm trying to hit that button right there, on that 25 to 34-year-old age group. That seems like, and it is, more deaths than in the 35 to 44-year-old age group. But depending on the size of the population, those rates could be very different, and they could switch order. So we're not comparing across these columns. We're looking at them going down, okay? Population is the same for every age group, so we can compare these simply by looking at the numbers of deaths. So I'm going to point out a couple of things. One thing among these infants, less than a year, we have 113 deaths, injury deaths for children. This list up here is less than 50% of those. So there's some overlap, but it's also not inclusive. So if we were looking at infants and we wanted to look at infant injury deaths, we would have to include issues related to breathing, suffocation. Most notably during sleep is where we would want to look. Again, all require a little bit more look. What we see is, we've seen the numbers, the rates, how they increase with age. You can see within each age group then where the issues actually are. So we see, here's motor vehicle traffic right here. We can see that in almost every age group, for the 5 to 14-year-olds, it's 77. That's the highest number of deaths. 15 to 24, over 700 deaths. So motor vehicle traffic continues to be a leading cause, mechanism for injury deaths. Suicides and traumatic brain injury for each one of these groups remains high. Poisonings, and in particular, in these middle ages, this acute drug overdose become very problematic. So those are things that we've seen before. They remain the same. These remain leading causes. Vary across age groups, vary across sex, and if we started to include other things, they will vary geography, all the other factors that we can look at. Here's the hospitalizations, same sort of issue, same thing. high numbers, where we see it, the high numbers in each age group are in those areas that we would expect, right? Not a lot of drowning, hospitalizations. Hip fractures, of course, are not until the 65 and older, but we see the motor vehicle traffic, again, leading, the poisonings, the suicide attempts, and the traumatic brain injuries. So it gives us some broad areas to point at for mechanisms. Okay? Questions?
Questions from the community? Question? Go ahead.
Can you get that data put up on the website, on the DSHS injury prevention page?
We can certainly request to do that. And we actually have, John has provided us with, the committee members with a hard copy of the presentation. And I think you emailed me a copy, so I can after the GTAC meetings, I can request that that be put up. Any questions of John? Very nice report. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tammy. I think this is, one of the things that we talk about, and this is a good segue into the summary of our workday meeting is we talk a lot about needing data, and it's very exciting to hear Courtney's report from the Trauma Registry Work Group and the data that's going to be available, plus the data that John has presented. And as we go on, we will try and update that data periodically so that you have access to that. So the next thing on the agenda is the Injury Prevention Committee did meet in January, had a workday meeting, and one of the things that we had started talking about is trying to develop some suggestions, recommendations for hospital-based injury prevention programs in Texas. And I think what we've tried to make very clear is these are not going to be regulations. We have no plans at this point of presenting them and trying to get rule changes or anything like that. These are strictly at this point in time going to be recommendations for hospital-based injury programs, and we're also looking at things that would be applicable to level 4s as well as level 1s, and trying to take those types of things into consideration. We invited TTCF and TTAF and RAC to participate in our workday meeting, and so thank you to all of those who gathered in Dallas in mid-January to come up with these recommendations. We've come up with some draft recommendations, and again, we really want input, particularly not just from the committee members, but also from others. And I think we have 4 or 5 recommendations that I can go through. 5 recommendations. Our next step, and I'll go through those in just a little bit, but our next step is to then have develop work groups over each of those 5 categories. So we're looking for people to volunteer. It won't take a lot of time. I suspect it'll be maybe several telephone conversations or conference calls, maybe some face-to-face meetings. Our hope is to be able to present this to the GTAC Council by the November meeting. The 5 areas are, number 1 is data. We need data. And Courtney is going to be leading that work group. Our plan is to develop a document that is not cumbersome. It's very easy to read. In fact, the template, if we can keep it to 3 or 4 pages, this is the template. But if we can keep it to 3 or 4 pages, and it will include information, for example, on data. What data is available to different hospitals, where suggested places to get data. Obviously, the Trauma Registry is going to be one. The Injury Indicators Report, the CDC Whiskers website, things like that. And then also there will be a section on, sorry, Courtney, also suggested not only why is data important, but suggested data sets. And then also we hope to have a real example of how a hospital-based injury program has collected data, used data, and things like that. So data is the first one. The second one, I think, is engaging partnerships. Again, we're going to provide the same level of detail in terms of suggested partners for hospital-based injury programs, why they're important, and some real-life examples. And Susan Birchfield is going to be heading up that work group. The third one is the need to provide ongoing continuing education training for your injury prevention coordinator at the hospital. And that section will include information about suggested trainings, formal and informal injury training programs, and Marianne Contreras is going to be heading up that work group. The fourth one is on locating evidence-based strategies. And again, we're hoping to provide some real examples. As you all may be aware, this committee last year developed a spectrum of prevention examples for different topic areas. So those are available for this section. We're also going to try and utilize a real hospital-based program and show what it looks like inside a spectrum of prevention. And so we're going to be working on that. I'm going to be leading up that work group. And then the last one is evaluation. Why is evaluation important, and how hospital-based injury programs can do evaluation basically on a shoestring budget and things like that. And again, providing some examples of that. And Stuart is going to be heading up that work group. We each have up here sign-up sheets. We would like to probably schedule some of the first conference calls for the work groups sometime before April. We will be planning we have another workday meeting scheduled for May the 2nd. So we'd like to have at least the first round of telephone calls or face-to-face meetings or whatever. So really, it is critical to us. A lot of us up here are at level 1 trauma centers. So it's very important that we get input from level 2s, level 3s, level 4s, and we're very excited that Scott Christopher and Jessica LaPlante were able to participate in our first workday meeting to provide some really good information about what is feasible at a level 3, level 4, whatever. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
She said this is going to be successful only if y'all assist us in developing this information and developing the plan, because it's something that needs to be a cooperative effort that's understood and planned and accepted by all of us at all of the levels. So we truly want your input and your participation.
And again, and I can't reiterate this enough at this point, this is not these are not going to be requirements for hospital-based injury programs in Texas. These are suggestions, and these are, a lot of times what we hear are, we don't have time you tell us how to develop a program, but it's basically we're having to go out and research all this stuff. What our intent with this is to provide some real-life examples, some real-life suggestions, and things like that. So again, these are literally suggestions. This is, there is an effort underfoot across the nation to do something similar. We just thought we'd jump the gun and take a first crack at it, and hopefully maybe they can, the national group can follow our lead. So, does anybody have any questions about that? Do I see any volunteers for any of the work groups?
Y'all, the doors are locked. The chambers are all signed. We promise all your contact information.
All right. Well, we will, yeah, go ahead.
I'm volunteering.
Well, come on, great. Well, see one of us. see one of us afterwards, Paulette. Thank you. Okay, next thing on the agenda is we had talked about developing a position statement regarding workforce development. And I think what I sent, and I don't know if you all had an opportunity to see it or not, but the Safe States Alliance has developed a position paper on workforce development. So what this group decided to do is take a stab at developing a workforce development, a similar workforce development position paper, pattern it after the Safe States Alliance, but try and make it a little bit more Texas specific. I have draft copies up here for each of the committee members. So committee members definitely going to want your input, edits. If you would like, if members of the audience would like an opportunity to comment as well, please see anybody on the committee after the meeting, and we'll make sure you get a draft copy. This is something that we'd also like to finalize probably, hopefully by the August meeting, so that we can present to the GTAC Council for their approval. So, comments, guys? Questions? Okay, we're moving right along. Okay, any announcements from the committee?
I have none.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Courtney?
Just one announcement. So for education regarding injury prevention, how to do it, and some programs that are effective, the Texas State ENA is doing an injury prevention symposium here in Austin at their state meeting. It's going to be April 10th, and it begins in the afternoon, so it allows travel into the daytime in the morning so that you can participate in the later afternoon. It's 4 hours. You will have an introductory lecture by Stuart Williams here regarding the basics and foundations of an injury prevention program, and then you will have examples of hospital-based injury prevention programs that people are using within their hospital. There is pediatric-based ones, older adult-based ones in that, and the programs that we selected were based on John's data that he got for us earlier in that development of what's the leading causes of fatalities and hospitalizations within the state of Texas, that we're really meeting the needs of how people are being injured.
And Courtney, is there a cost for that conference?
There is a cost. I believe it's only $40. It's a minimal.
I put some brochures on the table outside.
Okay, thank you.
Am I correct in $40? I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's correct.
It's $40. So.
45 non-members.
Okay, there you go. So even as a non-member, it's $45. So great opportunity for that.
Okay, thank you. Marianne, do you have any announcements? Susan? Okay, I have at least one announcement. It looks like there's not very many people sitting up here. We have, since the November meeting, had 3 people resign from the Injury Prevention Committee for as a result of unforeseen circumstances. Both Kara Tapley and Debbie Nichols took different jobs. They had hoped that they could stay a part of the committee, and then both have notified me that it just doesn't look like that they're going to be able to do that. And then Thelma Scott, who was recently appointed to the committee, I had word from her that she has some health problems and is not going to be able to join the committee after all. So we'll be talking to the folks at Dishes about whether we can reappoint people at this point, whether we have to wait until September, and we've notified Starla. So if you all are interested in being part of the committee, know of people that might be interested in being part of the committee, please let me know or Starla, and we'll see what we can do about getting them on the committee. Any announcements from the audience? Any questions from the public? Okay. Well, we will, as I said, our next, we have a workday meeting scheduled for May the 2nd. It's in Corpus Christi. We do not have a location yet. As soon as we get that, we'll be making the agendas available for that. Just as a reminder, general public is always welcome to attend those meetings. And then our next meeting will be full meeting will be in May with GTAC. One last chance. Any questions? Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Sign up with me. Sign up